That is the essential choice. Surrender or resist. Yes or no. Love or me. One leads to fulfillment and the other leads to suffering. That is my experience.
Am I trying to prove something to myself or to someone else? Am I trying to get something that can be called an achievement or a credential, even something that I can then sell? And this is clear. That's not what this is about for me. It's about falling beneath everything and surrendering, being quiet.
Got a little confused halfway through your talking. Are we recording an episode right now? I thought we were just talking. I
Yes.
didn't realize what we were doing.
Well, with the point of the podcast started with like we were having these beautiful conversations that just naturally we were like, we should be recording this. And we've sort of made it more of a thing. And I love bringing it back to the simplicity of and the plainness of we're talking from a deep experience and wishing we recorded it, and we are recording it.
Sure. I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation about not only who is this podcast for, but just who really is interested in awakening.
If you're not drawn to silence, you know immediately. You're just like, yeah, nah, I'm good, thanks, see ya. Whereas if you are drawn, challenges might still arise and probably will still arise. And there's clarity about being available to see through them.
I never really reflected on it, but it's true. There is an immediate recognition. And I say that from the standpoint of my own personal journey. When I first read Eckhart Tolle's book, I had this immediate recognition that I knew his words were true and he was pointing to something deep. And that was the direction for me right away. No hesitation. And then on the other hand, as well, when I talk to people about our podcast or about what I'm learning in the Leela School or what I'm doing in a lot of these meetings we host as mentors in training, they'll ask one or two questions about what's going on and then very quickly change the subject. They're just not interested to hear more about it or how it might apply to them or just awakening for their own lives.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. And it's not to say that I don't know that people would never change their minds. Like if I had been exposed to this teaching, I feel like I actually would have been really drawn to it, but I might not have been. And it's really about just the clarity of what do you want?
Such an important question. I feel really lucky that in our lineage and at the Leela School that this is such a big question that gets asked and becomes a huge focus. If you don't know what you want, then you kind of go in circles.
For me, it's not really like a mental question. It's just really clear. It's like, I remember the first time I made contact with someone who told me, we are one and love is the only thing that's real. And I was in a very different place in my life at that point, and I was just like, yes, I know this to be true. Sign me up for whatever you're talking about. And then years later, when I met Eli and he asked me what I want, I was like, I'm not really sure. But at the mental level, I couldn't describe something. But also, there was no question about clarity about this is appealing to me.
I actually had an immediate answer the first time I was asked by Lisa. And this was before I came to Leela School. I was just meeting with her privately for one-on-one help because I knew I wanted to go down this spiritual path, but I couldn't do it on my own. And when I met her and she said, "What do you want?" I knew right away fulfillment. everything I've done in my entire life has been to get fulfillment, and none of it ever gave me fulfillment. I wanted something that was lasting. And so I was able to connect in right away. But it did take time before I was able to actually experience that at a very deep level. I feel lucky now that I am fulfilled. I don't feel like I need anything. And me and you still often go to these Leela School retreats, and we get asked this question, what do you want? And my answer's changed now. It's like I'm not really searching for anything anymore. I go to the retreats because I love being there. I love awakening. I love inquiry, and I love the community. I love the support. There's no place I'd rather be, but it's coming from already feeling fulfilled. Silence is fulfilling. And that doesn't make sense on a mental level. When I filter life through my mind, I'm always looking for the next exciting, fun, pleasurable thing. And to my mind, silence seems boring and dead, furthest thing from fulfilling. But the actual true experience of it is so alive and complete.
What's coming for me is I'm remembering a reflection that you shared with me a few weeks ago about surrender. I'm just aware of the option to surrender right now in everything and having the experience, oh, yes. Ooh, yeah, surrender. And it starts off like that, but there's clarity, like surrender, yes. And it exposes a sense of wanting to prove something that can fall away. This grace of the grace of clarity, having nothing to prove. Like I'm aware that what I just said makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And it's such a relief that I'm not absorbed in this mental, forceful push of trying to communicate something specific, but rather the opposite. I don't know, is it the opposite? I'm in a different experience that's so different from that. It's like recognizing just that internal feeling of a push. And instead of saying, yes, I'm pushing, saying, yes, I'm pushing, and I can surrender without saying anything. I'm not saying anything. It's beautiful.
I love the word surrender. From my experience of listening to you, it doesn't make sense mentally. You're right. But for me, surrender means not trying to understand it mentally. And so I can hear your words and I feel love. And I don't get it on a mental level. If I really tried to understand what you just said, I would be in a state of confusion because it didn't really make sense. But I can hear you from somewhere deeper. And so for me, surrender is this internal letting go of a need to understand, letting go of a need to prove something as well, that I get what you're saying. And so I can respond in a smart way and we can connect like that. And people listening to the podcast could be like, yeah, but letting all that go feels so much better. Feels like falling. And there's just this experience of emptiness and love. And in that, I totally get what you're saying. It's like I can feel it from you.
What I notice? is that surrender isn't one thing. You know, even in myself as an individual, and I hear your experience of what surrender looks like right now. Like even in my experience, surrender isn't one thing, and it's more a possibility, like an option that is always here, completely available, that often I would overlook before I knew that it was an option. Not to say that it's always easy to have internal experience of surrender. Don't want to confuse in that way. But it's a possibility, and the possibility itself is freedom. The existence of the option of surrender is freedom. I notice how I really want to say more to make that make more sense. I don't have anything. I got nothing. That's it.
What's left to say? You just expressed the possibility for freedom. Feels really good to just be off the hook, to not need anything, to not need anything to be different. This is fulfillment.
Yeah, for me, it's this off the hook of proving anything. No proof. What would I be proving and to whom and why? And what comes here is I have like Lisa's voice coming into my ears saying, stay true to that. And I notice how the first time I heard her say that, there was such an effort around, all right, I'm gonna stay true to, okay, make sure I remember and definitely do the thing that I just learned how to do and stay true. And there was like a real gripping about it. And an innocent gripping, no harm done, a sincere, from a place of love, wanting to stay true to freedom. Beautiful. And what I learned that's here right now is it's like beauty. It's beauty itself and no effort required. Almost like immersion in what is beautiful, natural, and free here, right here, nowhere else.
I really like the word immersion because it's really easy to hear something like stay true and have this immediate egoic response of like, there's something to do. And that's where all this effort comes in that you're speaking of. But immersion, that's for me is more of like a dissolving into an effortless, mysterious non-doing. I don't really have the right word, but that's what's coming up right now. Being.
That's it. It's not about the right word. I'm laughing because the more we're touching in on this source of what we're talking about, the more we're both just really quiet, literally nothing to say.
Nothing to say, nothing going on. Just this pristine stillness. And isn't it a trip because we're recording a podcast?
Are we going to use this as a podcast?
I thought so. The deeper I surrender, the more I recognize that there's no separation between Surrender and love. It's the same thing.
Is it a verb or a noun? Is surrender an action word or a state that is constant? What about love?
It feels like I have to go into my head to really answer that question. So I don't know. I don't, doesn't really matter to me. It's not important. It's deeper than that. It's life. This is life. This is reality. This is what's always here. This is why I love inquiry. It's pointing to what is real and true and always here. And it's fulfilling. I just keep coming back to fulfillment.
What's coming up for me is that this question I just asked you is really tickling my heart area. It's like I'm checking. I'm like, is love, as we talk about it here, is it a noun or is it a verb? And I'm like, it's neither of those. And somehow the word is still so clear. This beauty that we can somehow still use words, even though they very literally can't describe what we're pointing to. And yet it's clear what love is pointing to. It's clear what surrender means.
And it's perfect that it's not a noun or a verb, that it can't be described that way. It's not a person, place, or a thing. It's not an action that gets done or taken. It's deeper than all that.
It's freer than all of that.
Yeah, it's beyond language. It is freedom itself. I really like this discussion because we can get caught up on certain words. I know in the Leela school specifically, we throw them around all the time. Stop, open, meet it, invite it,
Discover
surrender, be still.
silence. What's coming is that this is about the transmission of the word, not the language, not the part of speech. It's the transmission that we all make contact with such a deep level. So, like, if I were to ask someone, for example, right now, what's the experience of love? If love is here, there's choice, you know, we could go into thinking, we could go to picture, or we could go deeper and just receive what is here.
That is the essential choice to me. Surrender or resist. Yes or no. Love or me. One leads to fulfillment and the other leads to suffering. That is my experience.
Yeah, it's simple. And it's important, you know, we use a lot of words, even in the context of the school. And it's about the transmission beneath the words, as we often call it, the transmission of silence.
When I first met Lisa, there was such a strong transmission. I didn't quite know it at first, but the second, third, fourth time I met with her, it was like, why do I feel so blissful when I talk to you? And reflecting back now, it's like she really was so quiet, so empty, and was giving me all her attention, so loving. hearing me with nothing going on, no opinions, no judgments, not trying to fix me or make me different, really just listening and speaking from silence. And I caught that transmission, and the byproduct was feeling blissful. And that was really the start for me. At first, I projected it onto her, and it took some time until eventually I was able to discover it in myself.
This highlights the value, the beauty of Sangha, intentional community, as well as undoubtedly the importance of satsang, being with one who knows the truth, like Lisa, like Eli, like Jared. How we catch it at a level that's below words from others, and it pierces through everything.
It's such a cool mystery that some people are able to catch it and some aren't. Because when I first met Lisa, I was mesmerized, and then I wanted to introduce her to everyone. And slowly, I had her speak to different members of my family, and it just wasn't the same for them as it was for me. I'm looking at this woman like she's a goddess, and this is life-changing talking to her. And they would talk to her, and it was like having a conversation with anyone. It was no different. I was amazed by that at first.
Well, I remember the first time being in person at the Leela School in 2019 and sitting in that um, office, sitting in the house on Hellman Street. And there were, maybe 35 people in the room. And I remember looking around and being like, where is everyone? Like, what are y'all doing? Do you know what's happening in here? Like, what are you all? And then trying to go home and sharing Eli's book, Sudden Awakening, which spoke so clearly to me, sharing it with people and having them like not even finish the first chapter, or think that I'm in a cult, or just be like, yeah, no, that's not really for me. And yeah, it blew me away. And also, it's so clear, to bring it back to where we started. It's simple, it's clear. If the transmission sings and vibrates to you, there's no question about that. And if it doesn't, it's also very clear.
So if you're still listening this far in,
If we use this as a podcast.
thank you, Maeve.
Thank you, Jonas. Ah.